we have good things to announce, and that's why we're doing it. This is a really, to my mind, a very exciting program that addresses one of the biggest issues that we've had in the city, and that is the plight of our neighborhoods. We have most of our neighborhoods are the most livable places in America, places where where neighbors readily connect with one another, where we have children play in the streets and with the full confidence of their parents that they'll be safe. There are other neighborhoods in the city that have fallen on tough times, and they don't comprise the majority of the city, but for the residents who live there, it's their neighborhoods, and they're the ones who have to tolerate crime and vandalism and disorder and garbage and graffiti, and we've made great strides in dealing with those things, especially graffiti and trash. But we also have a number of problem properties around the city. We have, in the last 3 years, attempted to deal with the most irresponsible of landlords, and I will hasten to note that the vast majority of landlords in our city are very responsible, but there have been a handful over the years that have not treated their properties as though they would their own homes. That's the expectation, and it's not too much to ask. So we've taken steps. We've taken a very hard line to deal with problem properties, and it's been through the efforts of the neighborhood task force, of which the health department, Brenda Weiss, Mary Kellogg are part, and they'll speak in a moment. The building department, the fire department, the police department, and our task force leader, John Flora, have been working on over the last few years, and it's made a difference. Houses are in better shape now as a result of inspections, and they are more sanitary, and we've worked hard to really enforce the building code and the sanitation code in the city in ways that it's never happened before. But to my mind, it hasn't been enough. We have to do more. Buildings are safer and there's less trash, but there still are problem properties. And so that is why 2 years ago, I proposed the problem property ordinance, which has taken a long time to pass through the city council, but it is up for a vote at the next city council meeting, and we hope that will pass, because that is a provision that targets the worst of the worst landlords, and again, a very small fraction of all the landlords in the city. And it's a provision that will force landlords of properties that have 8 or more police responses within a calendar or within a year, within a 12-month period, to pay for those responses, to pay for additional police responses. And the reason's simple. At some point, the landlords, although the landlords can't control everything their tenants do, at some level, at some point they do. At some point, the landlord is part of the problem, and it shouldn't be the taxpayers to pick up the bill as a result. So that hopefully will pass, and we've been working with the city council to get that over the goal line. At the same time, a number of landlords have come to me and said, you know what, we're at a disadvantage at times, especially in court, when we go to court against some of our tenants who are misbehaving, and it's because they make claims to us that are not true about the condition of the property and about why they're withholding rent under Massachusetts law. Rent may be withheld if there are material changes to the property that undermine its habitability. And a lot of times, all too often in our city, landlords get into disputes about whether certain conditions on the property pre-existed the tenant or caused by the tenants themselves. So we've heard landlords, I think, have a legitimate gripe in that way. And so what we're trying to do with the proposal that I'll describe to you in a second is to give landlords the opportunity to make their case better in court in the event that tenants actually do create the problem conditions that cause them to withhold their rent. So we've proposed what's called a pre-rental voucher program. That's what we're announcing today. And under this program, a landlord can voluntarily have his or her property inspected by the city for a $100 fee, because after all, it's time on task by city employees. That inspection will allow the city to certify that the property is habitable, so that if it ever comes to a dispute between the landlord and the tenant, the landlord can say with assurance that the conditions that purportedly have caused the tenant to withhold rent were not the doing of the landlord. And so we want to eliminate that problem. We hear landlords, we've heard them complain about that very problem. And it happened, I know Mary's going to come up and talk a little bit about how this has come up from time to time as she's inspected properties. But this is a way of, we want our neighborhoods to be better. We want our neighborhoods to be vibrant. We want them to be safe. We want them to be places where children can play safely. We want people to be able to go out and walk their dogs at night and enjoy the space they live in. And we understand that the punitive measures are appropriate and necessary, but only go so far. We need to do a little bit more, and this is an opportunity to do a little bit more to level the playing field. So I really appreciate all the work that Brenda Weiss, our Director of Health in the City of New Bedford, has done with her team and coming up with and running with this proposal. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I know we've had landlords and tenants who can speak to, with responsible landlords and tenants, I will emphasize, can speak to how this program can make sense in their own businesses, because again, the problems in our city's neighborhoods are caused by disproportionately few landlords. And so we want to be clear to the landlord community that we're not trying to target good landlords. That is absolutely not the case. If you're a responsible landlord in the city, you can do business, and we will do everything we can to support you in your business. What comes with that, the responsibility of housing people, is to house them in ways that you would house your own family, house your own friends. So with that understanding, we've launched this program. We believe that it will help landlords get on better footing, especially in court when push comes to shove, and will make our housing ultimately better in the city. So with all that, let me just thank Brenda and Mary for being here. I'll turn it over to Brenda to describe the mechanics of the program. Brenda.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. So I'm just going to say a few words, because this program is really the brainchild of my senior sanitarian, Mary Ferrer-Kellogg, and she's going to sort of roll out all the details of it for you, so you can sort of see the nuts and bolts. She has some things for you to take away, some brochures and some information if you're curious about sort of how it works. So I'm going to reiterate some of the points the mayor said, because I think they're really important. I think over the last 3 years, we've made incredible strides with addressing problem properties in these neighborhoods, largely due to our neighborhood task force, but we have a way to go. We are not there yet. And so we see this firsthand in the health department, because our job is to make residential properties come into compliance with the sanitary housing code. This is a state code that every a municipality in Massachusetts and nationally has to uphold to ensure safe and well-maintained properties, residential properties. And these could be rental properties or single-family homes. So as the mayor pointed out, most landlords do a really good job of maintaining their properties, and a lot of them take steps, even creative steps, to make sure that their tenants are held accountable for keeping those properties in good conditions. So in many ways, this program is really honoring and empowering these landlords to keep doing that, to do that at a greater level, to set a good role model for other landlords who haven't fallen into this yet and haven't taken these steps to maintain these properties. Because let's face it, the more properties we have that look good, the more desirable our city will be, the more tenants are happy, the more landlords are happy, the more developers want to come into our neighborhood. So it's really a win-win in that regard. So this is really to say thank you and honor and empower the ones who are already doing it, and then hopefully bring some more landlords on board, property owners, to do the same. we do have a small percentage of landowners and property owners who are what we call repeat offenders. They just can't seem to get it right. So they have difficulty holding their tenants accountable when the tenant is not respectful of that property. And so we hope this program is something that they embrace too, to help them get their job in a better way and keep us off of them as repeat offenders, because we don't enjoy doing it. It's not something we like to do, but we have to do it because it is fair and it's how we hold all residential properties accountable at the same level. So we have a little experience with this already. We have a pre-inspection voucher program that we've used in Section 8 housing in the past, and it worked pretty well. This is really a bigger version of that, really building off what we learned and the successes we learned in that program with the Section 8 and offering it really more citywide and on a voluntary basis. So with that, I'm going to introduce again Mary Ferrer-Kellogg. She's my senior sanitarian who's going to walk us through sort of the nuts and bolts of the program.
Thank you, Brenda. Good morning, everybody. We started this program because we heard what the landlords were saying. We've been to many, many properties, and we see the same faces in multiple properties. So there's some relationship between the tenants not holding their piece of the bargain. So we talked, I surveyed many landlords and asked them if this were available, would it be something that they would partake in? And the consensus was if it were a voluntary program, they absolutely would. Because what it does is it creates a new level of respect for their property, for the tenant to hold their property, in a good standing, for the landlord, it's a level of respect, and it's a level of respect for the city of New Bedford. We go out and do the same jobs with the same people all the time. So now that's not going to be possible. The landlord comes to our office, files the application. On that initial application, it states how many people are moving into the unit. It's a huge problem for the landlords because they rent the property to the mother and the baby, and then 7 more people move in. That's a huge expense for a landlord. So this would stop that. There would be, right in the beginning of the tenancy, it would be stated who lives there, how many people, and it states the standards and conditions of the unit when that person took occupancy of that unit. So then, if the property gets broken down the road and we do get called for an inspection under minimum housing standards, we know that the landlord provided a safe, sanitary, certified home. So there's a condition in our regulations that says an occupant's failure to maintain, so that we can write a dual correction order to the landlord, because under state law we have to, and to the tenant, because we know that they didn't respect the owner's properties. It will hopefully save the property owner in the eviction process, because he'll have a packet that he can walk into court with. It states what the condition of that house was when they moved in. It has photographs that back it up. It has the original inspection report, and it has a certificate, one for the landlord to keep in his packet, and another one that we ask them to post in the common areas of the house. And the reason that we're asking them to do that is because if I were renting if I were going to rent an apartment and I went with the landlord to look at it, and I looked on the wall and I saw a certificate that said that this was a certified housing unit, I myself would feel comfortable knowing that this owner is taking care of his property. So that was the reason we asked him to post that certificate. It's, again, strictly voluntary. I hope that it's helpful to the landlords in their process to, to keep the standards. We're trying to raise the standards for housing in New Bedford. I think we've, as the Mayor and Brenda Weiss have said, we've come a long way, but would like to go a little bit further. We want it to be the best New Bedford we can be. I have brochures if anyone is interested. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to accept them.
Could you talk a little bit about the state law that allows renters to withhold a portion of their rent if things are broken, and mention any examples you've seen of that here?
There is a regulation in the state law that says if the occupant of the home has tried to contact the owner of the property and, told them that there were concerns that they had, and if the owner of the property isn't addressing those concerns and repairing them, then they can withhold rent. It's not, there's a a misnomer out there that says that they don't have to pay their rent, and that's not true. They're supposed to take their rent and put it in an escrow account and hold it until the property has been repaired. And it may not be the entire rent amount. It may be that there's a smoke detector missing, and I've seen in court where the judge will say, you're absolutely right, tenant, there was a smoke detector missing for 2 months, and I think the value of that smoke detector is $30 a month for 2 months. So they would draw the $60 from the fees owed, and you're supposed to pay the landlord the remainder of that money. So it's not, there's a premise that it's a blank card, oh, I just don't have to pay my rent, and that's not true. They do have to give the property owner the chance to make the repairs.
How common are those situations in New Bedford? How often do you see it?
Very, very often, very often. We'll go on an inspection and there'll be an occupant who, you know, they'll make things up just trying to get that piece of paper for the correction order to explain why they didn't pay the rent. And it's very evident to us that, you know, some of these cases are very evident that you're fishing. You're just trying to get something, and they'll go, oh, well, all right, well, what about this one? Okay, what about that one? You know,
What kind of things, like a smoke detector, what else?
a plate missing off a switch or a socket, or the smoke detector, the bracket will be there, but the smoke detector is missing. So it's obvious that it was there, at some point it was there. The landlord obviously put it there, but when did it disappear? I don't know. Previous to this inspection, this pre-rental voucher, I couldn't say if it was there when the tenant moved in or not. With this, I will absolutely 100% be able to say there were smoke detectors in that house. There were covers on the switch plates, there were covers on the sockets, the rugs were in good condition, the toilets worked, the stove worked, the sinks worked, there was hot water. We will be able to definitely say those conditions were a fact when that person took occupancy of that house.
I see a problem with the $100 fee and voluntary. I'm not sure, I know you surveyed some landlords, that's great. I'm not sure you're gonna get that many landlords agreeing to pay $100 for a pre-inspection. Maybe I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. And number two, it's voluntary. And how many are going to pony up the money and do it? They don't have to. Shouldn't this be mandatory?
Well, this is a pilot program right now. We're testing the waters to see how it works. As far as the $100 fee, $100 is a lot of money, you're right. But in reference to 4 months' rent that you would be fighting in court with your tenant, you know, that's a huge difference. I would pay the $100 up front and know that I have security to say these were the conditions. So when I go for the eviction process, I have documentation that proves what the standards were when you took occupancy.
Yeah, I'll hasten to note, Jim, that we proposed a mandatory inspection program a couple of years ago to the city council, and that ordinance didn't go anywhere. So we're trying to do what frankly is the next best thing, and that is to give landlords an opportunity to get what in effect is a good housekeeping seal of approval, so that, you know, when disputes happen, they're able to say decisively that they did all that was expected of them.
I'm sorry. And that's $100 per apartment or per building?
It has to be per unit, per tenant. Because that's the only way you can hold that tenant responsible for their tenancy within that unit. Your tenancy, hopefully, I had a landlord at the Landlords Association who said, well, what if I have tenants every other week? And I said, the premise of this is that your tenant's going to stay long-term because he has a safe and healthy home.
If you have tenants every other week, then there's a problem.
That's what we're trying to eliminate.
The voluntary part comes in, either you're going to do it or you're not.
It's your property. At the end of the day, it's your property. If you want to maintain it, and you want to take that extra step and have that insurance, by all means, it's there and available to you.
Yep.
If you choose not to, then you take your chances in housing court when your tenant said, nope, it was like this when I moved in. Prove to the magistrate that that wasn't a condition.
And I think at the end of the year, we're gonna have a lot better idea of how we did. How many people took advantage of it, how many properties that we certified changed hands over the 8, 10 months that we're gonna do it. And so really, this is an opportunity to learn, to see if it's gonna work. And if it works, which we hope it does,
I hope so.
we could roll it out on a bigger scale. But I think we're at the place where we just need to do something. I
It's a
think
tool. It's a tool for the landlord to put in his toolbox and use
Yeah.
when he needs to.
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
I'm a local landlord, and I'm also a business owner. I was joking with Mary that this is gonna screw up my screen and repair business, it's gonna go down.
Sorry about that.
But as a landlord, my biggest gripe, and Mary and I have met at numerous of my buildings, the minute they're back on their rent, the first people they call is the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, 95% of the people do not put the money in escrow. Listen,
Yeah.
they just don't do it. It just doesn't happen.
Yep.
It is the law, and I don't blame the city for that, I blame the housing court for that. I think they should mandate that the money go into escrow. Or they have no leg to stand on, and that's, I know that's a different case for a different day. But as far as this program goes, Mary and I spoke about it 2 months ago, 3 months ago at the Landlord Association meeting, and I thought it was a great program. And I will take advantage of it, only for the fact that I don't have to, obviously I'm gonna have to repair the stuff, which is what Mary and I spoke about, I will have to repair the stuff. But now when I go into housing court, and I sit in front of the magistrate, and I just I mean, if any of you are landlords and you've ever been to it, it's a long process. It's just a long process, and it's time consuming. It'll take for me to evict four tenants, it takes a whole Friday morning. It's a long process, and a costly process. By the time you get done, it's $1,000 to evict 4 tenants. Without the money you lose in rent and all that, and then the repairs of the building. So I think with this, we have a leg to stand on, and then criminally, destruction of, I think we'll have a leg to stand on criminally on destruction of property. So if they break windows and they punch hole in walls, remove doors, which I've seen it all. Leave dead animals in the apartments. We've gone through that. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I think that a lot of the tenants, I'm sure some of the tenants some of the landlords that have 500, 600 units. So I'm a small guy. I have 52 apartment units. I will take advantage of this. I will use it to my advantage. That's the way I feel about the program.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, Joe, because they make a lot of sense. It makes the housing, at least it should make the housing court process more certain, because it won't be a he said, she said thing. That hole was there, no it wasn't, yes it was, that kind of thing. So you can hold up the certificate and say, no, there was no hole there, or the fire detector did have its cap, or the doorknob, or whatever, the door wasn't ripped off. That'll say it. And that means too that if in housing court, the judges say, you know what, I'm not sure that certificate means that, well, then that's backed up by the city. The city will be there in court saying, no, we don't sign that certificate unless it's all squared away.
So to build on that, the same things we're looking at on a pre-inspection are the same thing we would come in if a tenant complained. It's the same housing code, okay? So that's the good part, is that the rules aren't different for the pre-inspection or if a tenant calls and complains. So you're getting viewed by the same criteria, and I think that's actually helpful for you guys, yeah.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that to me before the press conference that you could find tenants as well. If there's, if it shows that they were messing up the property, would this be something that a landlord could call and complain about a tenant? Could a landlord call, if you had the certificate, and say, hey, this tenant is messing up my property, I still have 4 months left on my lease, is there something that we can do to get the health department in on our side to kind of unstack the deck a little bit against landlords?
So I'll tell you that the housing code does allow us to hold a violation to both a property owner and a tenant. The problem is we can't prove who caused the problem, right? In this instance, if it's a certified property, we have a much better chance of being able to say that it's the tenant that's at fault. okay? If you call us, if anyone calls us and says, I have a problem with my property, we're gonna do an inspection, okay? So that goes the same for either person, but the housing code, the hard part for us is the proof part, is who did it.
And does it have to be a new tenancy, or can we get a current tenancy certified?
It has to be a new tenancy because it has to be, we don't know what the standard was when that person took occupancy initially.
Will that be uncomfortable for, like, say Ian and I have a 12 unit, and we only have one vacancy right now, so we're gonna have one certified unit and 11 non-certified units?
Well, think about this. If your tenant moved out next week and you have that one certificate hanging and you're showing your new apartment to your new prospective tenant, that person's gonna feel pretty good.
I'm not saying, if I were a tenant, I'd feel great about that, but my other 11 tenants are gonna feel like they're getting the short end of the stick, I believe. Why isn't my unit certified? Do I have a worse unit?
I don't know that you couldn't do it at a new lease because it would be a new lease signing. You couldn't do it in the middle of a lease, for sure. It would have to be a new, like if you were re-signing.
I'm just saying, so you said that the certificate has to be posted in a common area.
Mhm.
So basically every resident of that entire building is going to know which units are certified and which are not. And I'm just worried that, those that are not are gonna start thinking, like, oh, wait, if I'm not certified with the city, maybe I can get some free rent in here, maybe I can, and will that lead to more calls, more complaints?
I don't believe it will. I believe that's exactly where we are today.
Yeah.
It's not gonna make it any worse or any better. And anyone has the right, any tenant has the right to call in a complaint to the health department, and we're gonna go and see if it's true or not.
Right.
So I think at least your tenants who are currently there will know that you're being proactive.
Right. And hopefully the ones that are still there and long-term tenants are good tenants. So really, this is to protect you against a tenant that might not be that good moving forward. So hopefully the ones you have are already on board. They see that you're being proactive as you move forward. And as Mary said, when you redo their lease, you can offer it to them, right, if it's annual or every 2 years.
There are two other pieces of this pre-rental voucher program. If you were to have a pest control assessment done within that 14-day period of your tenant taking occupancy, we will include that in our packet, in the initial packet, so that, again, you would have proof that at that time when that tenant moved in, there were no pests. And if you had a lead certificate, we would include that as well.
Right.
We're not testing, if you rent to a family with a child under 6, we are not doing a lead test for that property. So that would be your responsibility as a landlord to make sure that there wasn't lead in that home.
Right.
Just one more question for you, Mary. From the time we call you about getting the application in, how long before, I know it's a new program, and I know, you're mad at me, John, but I know that we're understaffed everywhere. So how long from the time I get the application in, to the time that you guys would come down to do the inspection? What are you thinking? Obviously, this is new, so I'm sure you don't have it down, but what are you guys thinking? Is it 7 days, 14 days?
I am proud to say that the people that call in complaints, and this would be no different, it would be a scheduled event. People who call in to schedule an event get a call the same day or the next day on average.
Right.
And you come down the next day to do the inspection?
Many times we do.
Report.
Many times we do. I was asked this question at the landlord meeting by Kevin Welsh. He said, oh yeah, when are you guys gonna come down? And I said, Kevin, how long does it take me to do a recheck? He said, well, I call you when you come the next day. I said, why is this any different?
Right.
It's the same. We schedule our
Because of,
appointments.
for the time that we're ready to rent, and the time we get a tenant, sometimes we get a tenant 2 days before the first.
We are very, very business friendly, and
Yes.
we work very hard at being amicable to the people that show up at our door and ask us for something.
And try to give the very best customer service. So we get a lot of complaints, we do, and a lot of them are not factual, but we investigate every single one of them. We don't give preferential treatment. Everyone gets the same service. We try to turn everything around within 2 days for an inspection. If we can't make an appointment with someone, if you have a tenant that doesn't let us in, that may prolong things. So I'm going to throw that in there because that's something that you may need to manage with us. The inability to get into the unit. That's correct. I'm
It would
just
be the
saying in
owner.
general, right.